Hello!
Hi everyone, welcome to this, the third and final live stream event of this run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. We're also at the end of week 6 now, and so we'll start with introductions because that's polite, but I'm assuming that people that have stuck with us for the 6 weeks are going to know who we are now. So my name's Graham McPhee, I'm based here at the University of Strathclyde. I'm the lead educator on Caring for Vulnerable Children.
My name is Dr. John Paul Fitzpatrick. I'm an honorary research fellow here at the University of Strathclyde.
Okay, so it's good to have you with us, both those that are watching us in real time and if you're watching the recording afterwards. So we've got quite a lot that we want to try and get through in the kind of 40 minutes or so that we've got. There's been a couple of things happening over the last couple of weeks that we're going to talk about. One is the two-part poll in terms of the 10 scenarios, and people had to pick the 3 in week 5, pick the 3 that they had most concerns about and say why. And then we give them a bit more information in week 6 and see how things change. So there's some interesting material there. We're going to spend a bit of time talking about Billy as well. We'll get to the end of Billy's story. At the end of week 5, Billy was at the children's hearing, and the panel were ready to make their decision, and we asked the learners to give their thoughts on that. So we've got the result of the poll, and at 12 o'clock today, the episode 6 became available, so we're going to talk about that. We've got some more general questions that we've had largely about the themes of week 6, but given that we're towards the end of the course, we'll kind of spend some time just kind of talking about kind of the learning over the last 6 weeks in general. So that's what we're going to run through in the next 40 minutes or so.
Sounds great.
Okay, so, and again, just to kind of reinforce what a good run this has been, I've got some stats here. Over 3,200 people joining the course. We've had, well, when Sarah sent me these stats earlier on today, we were just under 9,000 comments. Who knows, we might be over 9,000 comments by now. Over 126 countries represented in our learners. That was going to be my quiz question, and I spoiled that. I was going to get John Paul to guess.
Thank goodness that didn't happen.
And I guess we do want to emphasise this, and we're aware, and we'll say it again at some point in the next 40 minutes, we're sitting here in a university in Scotland, we're talking about practice examples from Scotland, but we truly have a worldwide audience, and that constant theme of how I think a lot of the things that we're talking about are absolutely transferable across continents, across countries, in terms of this challenge of how we care for and look after vulnerable children. We've had learners from Nigeria, from Norway, from Libya, from Jamaica, Yemen, Guatemala, Benin, Jordan. I mean, it just the kind of list goes on. So it is fantastic that there's so many people joining and contributing from different countries.
And make a point, if you have enjoyed the course, do tell your friends, because the course will repeat at some point in the near future. So do tell friends, family, anyone else that's interested, so that they can benefit from the same learning experience that you've had as well.
And just to make sure that you can make the most of the materials, and this isn't a sales pitch. We're here at the Strathclyde, and we don't necessarily represent future learn, but it's just to flag up that the course will remain open. All the material will remain open for another 2 weeks, unless you've upgraded, and then you keep access to it indefinitely. But if you haven't upgraded, then you've got another 2 weeks, and then your access to it would end. So it's just, don't want that to come as a surprise to anyone. Right, so let's start with the polls first. So say in week 5, similar to the exercise that we had in week 1 and week 2, where we gave them 10 very small scenarios. And again, let's kind of say this up front. We know that social workers will be making decisions on
much more information.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not trying to replicate necessarily what social workers would be doing. It's an exercise that's just encouraging us to kind of step back and think about, right, what are the factors, what are the scenarios that might kind of cause risk, cause concern, and cause us to kind of think about vulnerability and care protection issues for children and young people. So you all voted in week 5, and I say we're not going to run through all the results here. They're all on the site now, so you can go in and see it. What's really interesting is the change between week 5 and week 6 because of just a little bit more information that people get. And I guess we're going to start with one, and it's interesting that this is the 8th run of Caring for Vulnerable Children. We used this exercise all 8 times, and we have the same conversation here at this time every time, because there's one scenario drops markedly. And I guess we're always slightly surprised. Well, are we surprised? I don't know, but that's what we'll talk about.
This will be the case of Kelly, if I'm right.
No.
No, I'm wrong.
Yeah. So,
that'll teach me.
Scenario 2, Jane and Jim.
Right.
So Jane is 7 and Jim is 5. So in week 1, let's get the information. Jane is 7, Jim is 5. Their mother lives with a man who regularly physically assaults her. Neighbours reported their concerns to the police. So after week 1, on that, Jane and Jim get 47% of the votes. So easily in the top 3, one of the ones that the scenarios that people are a bit most concerned about. That's not the surprising bit, or that's not perhaps the challenging bit. It's what comes next. So in week 6, you get the additional information. The children have never been assaulted, but have witnessed their mother being abused. The police referred the children to the hearing system because of concern about their safety. The children love their mother and she loves them. And we see this drop from 47% down to 14%. So only 14% of learners, second time round, are saying this is in my top 3.
So what do you think is driving that shift in the minds of our learners going through the course?
Right. So, and imagine in some of the comments that people make point towards it, and it's about the fact that the children have never been assaulted themselves. Okay, and that seems to be for a lot of people, that's a determining factor. And it's not necessarily that people thinking that the children are safe or 100% safe, but they're not being assaulted. And it's just mum that's been assaulted, as if that's ever acceptable. But clearly for a lot of people, it's a big enough shift to see such a big change in the numbers. And I say this group of learners is not any different to previous groups. And I think it reflects quite a lot of things about, I guess, attitudes and perceptions about domestic abuse, the impact of domestic abuse, and the impact of domestic abuse on children and young people, even if they aren't been physically assaulted themselves, and the difference between them being physically assaulted themselves and then being in a household where domestic abuse is happening, where it's a feature, and where they might be witnessing it, because the research is unequivocal in terms of the impact of being in a house where domestic abuse is happening. You don't need to be physically assaulted yourself for domestic abuse to have huge impact and consequences for young people's health, growth, development, safety, etc. So in one sense, we're sitting here thinking it's quite concerning that we've got so many people, and I'm not convinced that these patterns within our learners would change that much if we to go out and do this exercise with the general public.
I mean, I think even actually in some professional circles, Graham, there's still a need to educate a whole range of different professionals around the impacts of trauma. For example, teachers. There's a big focus just now across the United Kingdom on adverse childhood experiences. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. It just strengthens the need for everyone to have a good understanding of the impacts of trauma, and again, strengthens the need for earlier intervention and decision making. Yeah. Really interesting.
So that whole, I guess part of our prompt would be if this is something that you're interested in thinking about further and finding out further. I mean, there's more and more research and literature about the impact of domestic abuse, and especially the impact of domestic abuse on children and young people who are kind of part of families, and so kind of follow some of that stuff up, because obviously say I find it quite concerning that so many people don't think it's that an important issue if the children aren't being assaulted themselves, and I guess to that end we have pulled out one comment from Doreen Norris, because Doreen actually emphasises the opposite. So thanks for your comment. And she made a comment that she still chose the same 3 scenarios, and I'm just going to focus on the one at the top, that Jane and Jim even though their mum's partner has not hit them, they are witnessing domestic abuse, and it is a very unsafe home environment. Absolutely. And we could go further and say this will have an impact on their emotional, social development and everything that stems from that. So it's a kind of really important point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other ones that had kind of significant, well, we'll talk about Kelly. Kelly went in the opposite direction. First time round, Kelly only got 4%, so a tiny amount of the learners, she was in the top 3, but a number of them, it went up to 23%, so just under a quarter were more concerned. So Kelly was 14. In first time round, she does not attend school regularly, and when she does, she falls asleep in class. She was referred by her guidance teacher. That's what you got. So yeah, we can understand why there's only 4% first time round, and certainly compared to some of the other 9, it's not that immediate. So what's changed? Further investigation shows her father left the family 2 years ago. Her mother is a drug addict. She falls asleep in class because she's looking after her 4-year-old brother and her 3-year-old sister at home. She is worried that something will happen to her mum. Okay, so we've got a lot more information now. We know that, and so in previous weeks, the participants have had information. We've spoken about young carers, and so Kelly would appear to be in the category of being a young carer. She's got caring responsibilities for her siblings. Mum is at home. Now, we've just got the very general information. Her mother is a drug addict. That could mean any number of things. So we should again it reinforces the point about what we would expect social workers to be delving into and getting more information.
Absolutely, in terms of drilling down, length of time, subject to what substance, what supports, other supports are in place, etc. Yeah, absolutely, so many.
But we again see that some of the reasons behind the falling asleep at school regularly and not being there, and kind of thinking about the impact that being a carer and some of the worry that might be there and stress that might be there for Kelly in terms of, I would imagine, both being worried not just about our younger siblings but our mum also. And so we have had material in young carers, and there have been some interesting comments about that. I guess the kind of one of the things I kind of find interesting often when I can speak to kind of social work students about kind of sort of stuff, I think we've got to be careful that we don't immediately jump to the conclusion about if somebody's in a position where they're a young carer and they've got caring duties, that the best response is to take all that off them or plop them out of that situation, because situations are generally kind of far more complex and nuanced than that. And the best thing that we can do in the first instance is try to get as much information as possible, try kind of get a kind of clear assessment of the scenario, and think about how we can best support not just Kelly, the young carer, but everybody else involved in the scenario.
And still try and balance, I suppose, care, stability of routine, stability of being rooted within the local community, and just going back to that kind of central issue of what is in the child and family's best interests.
Yeah. And that's, for me, this one's actually very timely, because I was marking a dissertation this morning from a final year social work student, and it was about a piece of research he'd done with a group of young carers, all between the age of 16 and 18, and it was talking about their experience of being young carers and about the support that they received or hadn't received from their perspective. And one of the things that they were all saying, and it was a fairly small sample, it was 8 young carers, all between the age of 16 and 18, but when the social work student was speaking to them, just about all of them spoke about a fear of them revealing too much of their story because they were worried what might happen. And by that it was, I might end up in care, or my siblings might get taken away, or something might happen to mum or dad or whoever it is, because we'll be in trouble. So the fact that many young carers will be in situations with their young carers, but it's not widely. So
it's a hidden population across the whole country, where we maybe don't even have the statistics that we do have, don't recognise the true extent of children that are in that kind of caring situation. I presume, I'd be interested to know is if that's the same in your country context, how widely reported as this? Is it socially acceptable for children to be kind of stepping into these breaches and in that kind of role as well?
And I think that's a really important point, linking back to our international audience. We're very aware that we are sitting here in Scotland, in the UK, and in the Western world, kind of looking at this through our lens. There'll be many other parts of the world where I think it would be far more routine or far more ordinary for children young to have quite substantial care and responsibility, and sometimes actually quite substantial kind of responsibilities in terms of going out and working and that raises a whole different range of issues about kind of vulnerability and risk and such like. So all these conversations have got to take place within a local context, and that will differ and vary around the world. So we'd encourage everybody, if you haven't already, go to week 6, look at the poll results, look at how the poll results have changed, and especially look at the 3 that you selected in week 5, and did you change your votes in week 6? I know there's lots of comments, people saying I stuck with the same 3. Other people were more minded to change. So lots of interesting stuff there. So thanks for participating. We're going to move on now. We're at the kind of just the more kind of general questions asked, and I guess the two, a question here from Robert Rooney, so thanks for that, and also a question from Gidget Wong, and they both to a certain extent feed into a kind of a theme of week 6, and also one of the films that we asked the participants to watch this week was yourself, John Paul, kind of talking about some of the kind of challenges moving forward. And again, put this into context: Western Europe, austerity, the squeeze on all public services, but especially social care, social work, education, and the public services. So many of the services that would typically be involved in supporting and providing services to vulnerable children and families, those are a lot of the services that are having the biggest squeeze. So within that context, we've got Robert asking the question, what could individuals, what actions could individuals take to help change dwindling social care budgets? And Robert says, for me, it's very hard to be listened to without coming across negatively. And I think that bit that you express at the end, Robert, is a challenge that many people face, both those in the system and those kind of outside, kind of looking in, and that notion of kind of picking your battles in terms of the arguments that we choose to have. But it links into what you were talking about in your film with the participants this week, John Paul.
Yeah, I mean, and a really good question, a really good point, Robert. So thank you for raising it. I suppose it raises issues around where we choose in whatever particular country context and societal context we live in to prioritise. So within a kind of democratic culture, do we invest in taxation and increase taxation to fund critical services like this? Do you have power and agency as an individual to lobby or shape for investment in services in terms of working with local decision makers that make the decisions to raise the priorities for this? I think this is an issue that certainly in a United Kingdom context will only increase in complexity, particularly from an elderly care perspective, which Graham is much more closer to than myself, obviously, in terms of leading the services. I say that jokingly, but there is, because the level of resource as people live longer in terms of requirements and drains and pensions and services, and then big decisions being made where almost we're asked to prioritise. Do we choose investment in elderly services? Do we choose investment in children's services? Do we put more of a burden on the public? And in terms of kind of voluntary work, do we put more pressure on NGOs or third sector organisations to pick up the slack? I mean, it's such a complicated series of actions that are interrelated, that link to economics, but linked to kind of themes around democracy and participation, linked to, I suppose, as well, challenges around the democratic kind of way of decision making. For example, In Scotland, we often work to 3-year kind of spending plans that are quite often linked to the kind of democratic kind of power holders and who's been voted in. So we don't really make brave long-term decision making around kind of 10, 15 years decisions and 15-year budgets. So we have a very short-term reaction to kind of decision making and etc. So I think it's, Robert, I would get involved. I would get your sleeves rolled up. I would cause a revolution. So don't take this with a pinch of salt, but lobby, get involved professionally. It might inform your decision making in terms of what career strands you go in. But as a private citizen in whatever country you're in, you have agency, you have a voice. Where can you affect change? Where can you raise awareness of this? And yeah, just keep agitating, keep raising issues.
And I guess kind of what you said there, John Paul, kind of in a way almost offers an answer to Gidget. Also, in terms of this notion of kind of how far ahead are we looking to changes and the time taken to implement them. And I think the point that you make there about political cycles and kind of new governments or new come in with different priorities, different spending plans, and we often kind of what we were doing gets kind of ripped up and we start again, and that kind of a real concern about the. I think one of the themes, well, certainly in week 1 and week 6, but I don't think it's the theme of poverty. I think was most prominent in week 1 and week 6, but it's there throughout the 6 weeks again for vulnerable children. But not just logic, research and research evidence suggests that the only way to respond to poverty in any sort of systematic way is long-term responses, and the constant shift in policy with political cycles doesn't always help that. So Gidget, my answer is that sometimes I'm really frustrated by the fact that we move from one review to the next, we move from one new policy initiative to the next, and we're changing things before they've had a chance to bed in, and a new set of ideas comes in, and we implement it. But the evidence, i.e. the amount of children and families living in poverty, the amount of children who would be deemed vulnerable and needing a service, at best generally stays constant. What we've experienced, certainly in the UK in the last number of years, is frightening levels of increase. And I actually think about combining an answer to both of these. Since we last did this 2 weeks ago, two things have jumped out at me in the media from a UK perspective. One is about kind of more of a short light getting spun on the issue of homelessness, and the just appalling and scary increase in the levels of homelessness. But even worse than that is our response as a system to it, because increasingly people who are experiencing homelessness have been dealt with by the criminal justice system. They're being criminal. It's like something out of Victorian poorhouse times. And I know I'm kind of speaking from my own perspective. It's not just my perspective. I think there's lots of people share that same perspective.
Absolutely is. And actually linked to that, in the last 2 weeks in London alone, there have been eight young people's lives lost either to gang violence or kind of an increase in knife crime. And there's absolutely a clearly documented correlation between austerity and then lack of kind of services and youth work services. It's the same things that we were talking about over the last couple of weeks in the piece that I did. And yet where that is becoming hugely prevalent and hugely pressing. So if we don't shift our direction, and if we don't raise the questions that you're all been asking over the last kind of 6 weeks of the course, then I have worries as well. So through a determined effort, and many of you will be the future decision makers as you go on into politics or managing services. Just remember us when you're rich and famous. But you've got the power. So in whatever your role is, that gives me hope. That's the bit that gives me absolute hope, is the care and regard that you've all put in terms of thinking through the issues and realising the complexity and interrelationship between these, but we've got to invest.
I think that's a real important point you raised there about as we reduce investment in community level supports and services, and taking that example of London, and it's well documented about the amount of kind of community services that are disappearing and shutting up shop because of a lack of funding. And there's a link here to Billy's story, because and we've said this in week 2 and week 4, and we'll say it again. Billy's a fictional story, but it's very much rooted in reality. And Billy's getting support from his advocacy worker, which is a community-based organisation. And I can't remember exactly what week it said, but it's said in the narrative their funding's under question. And these are the sorts of organisations that help to sustain and support and develop communities and individuals within them. And these are the sorts of organisations that are increasingly finding it difficult to continue to exist or to offer the level of support. And my worry, or my real frustration and anger in the scenario you described there is, and again, those from the UK will probably be kind of quite familiar with this, certainly the situation in London, we're getting increased media attention on knife crime and the amount of stabbings, and especially amongst that younger population. But there's still a big section of the press, and there's still a big section of the public. The immediate response is to blame those communities, to blame the young people. Now, and there's absolutely no connection or little connection made between the fact that as we continue to disinvest in these communities, that there won't be consequences to that. And it links to Billy's story in that sense, in terms of that community investment. So as John Paul said, I think there's a kind of challenge for us all in terms of and we'll all play a role in different ways, I think, in terms of how we can argue for and lobby for a more cohesive, or more investment, more cohesive, community-based
and socially just.
Yes, and that commitment to social justice. And Gidget, your question about the part of that becomes about us desperately trying to inject a wee bit of longer-term thinking into the whole system, so that we just don't rip up things and start again every 3, 4 or 5 years, depending on what the election cycle is. So thanks for those questions. But I mean, this really links into the because at the end of your film, you ask people the question for right, what are you going to do about it in terms of this? So I mean, you've said a little bit about that already, but we had some good comments come back from that, didn't we?
Yeah, there was a few. We've got one here from Laura S. Laura, thank you for your contribution. Laura said she's very, very thought-provoking. She was asking, I suppose, to consider our own role in making a difference, not only to the children we worked with, but in the communities we live in, and found that a powerful question. And I suppose just that reminder that we all need to take action. And I suppose, Laura, it's that thing about reminding the power that we do have in terms of collective action, either through voluntary work, through what we do, what we get involved in, where we lobby, where we support, where we challenge, or where, when it's safe for us to do so, we just ask questions. Why is that policy like that? Why do we spend where we spend? Just thinking about your own situation, your own country context, just take a step back and think, what can I actually do here to make a difference to one child's life, or to raise the issues so that we have earlier intervention for all of our children and young people.
Yeah.
We've got a few others as well.
Yeah. And I think Anne Callahan makes a good point. So Anne, thanks for your comment. And she, again, talking about the context of the UK, so think about how this applies where you are, but she makes a comment about a number of communities that and she used the words destroyed, and because of the huge change that the UK's went through in the last 20, 30 years in terms of kind of industries that used to sustain and be very much part of the community, and especially kind of thinking about a lot of the heavy industries kind of mining, shipbuilding, etc., and communities that they just have had the guts ripped out of them because of that. And then when we factor in about how that, we've not mentioned specifically, but housing plays a part in this as well. And Anne mentions that, and she just talks about some of the challenges then that communities face in terms of maintaining community spirit and kind of supporting each other when and we've got far more places that exist where they're almost commuter towns or commuter communities, and
actually I suppose the role of, and this is a global issue, and I will touch on it very briefly, but as we all become addicted to our phones and revert in the way through technology, are we spending less time actually engaging with neighbours and communities and community facilities? Yep. Are we physically coming together to actually have that kind of shared sense of community?
And Anne goes on to talk about in public transport links to more rural communities, and we can extend that to, in the UK, and certainly mirrored in North America, as communities change and the growth of out-of-town shopping centres, and the only way, or for many, I mean, we use the phrase food poverty a lot now in the Western world, because a number of communities, it's almost impossible for them to buy good, reasonably priced, healthy food, because in order to get to the shops where you can do that, you generally need a car, because all the big shops are moving out of town, and communities and it almost like ever decreasing circles in terms of one disadvantage on top of another. And then when you don't have good public transport links, you can't get to those shops, and one thing compounds another. So again, I guess that one of the messages that we would want to be getting across, if there's, and I think there are a number of messages from the course that motivated us to do that, to make this course in the first place and continue to run it. And it's about encouraging people to think about what role can we all play in taking forward some of these issues. I want to make sure that we talk about Billy's story to finish. So spoiler alert here: if you're watching this and you've not clocked onto Billy's story, the episode 6 became available at 12 o'clock our time today, so we're going to talk about the ending now. So there's just giving you a second to switch it off or pause it, so that you can go watch the ending and then jump back. So we'll assume you've done that now. Okay, so the end came out. So we'd asked people, so we only gave you two choices. We said, would you like to see Billy stay at home with mum, or would you like to see a temporary respite foster placement? So the result of the poll was quite overwhelming. 82% of people said the best place for Billy is at home. And if you've watched the video, you'll know that that's what happened. Okay, so even though it only came out at 12 o'clock today, there's already a number of comments have been posted. And just about everybody's saying the same thing. And actually, I find it quite hard that, in contrast to the domestic abuse scenario we were talking about, I find this one quite heartening in terms of the messages.
Definitely. I mean, Fiona Smith's point, the outcome is good, but she qualifies it, and I love the way that you do this, Fiona. If the right support is put in place and the family is kind of willing to work at it. I mean, that one about it again, being supported, is there going to be real kind of supports and investment in the family? If that's just gets to the heart of it.
And there's just one comment after another with people saying, I'm glad Billy's staying at home. I think that's the best thing for him. But unless sustained support is put in place, are these issues going to raise their head again? And if you've watched episode 6 and you've listened to the commentary, that's the issue that we raise. We say that this is the end. It's the end of Billy's story in terms of it doesn't. It's fictional. It doesn't go anywhere from here. But we say there will be challenges ahead for that. And Billy's mum's mental health issues are still there. The vulnerability and care for Billy is still there. And actually, I know we're having that discussion about young carers. There's an element of that at play here with Billy in terms of the concern that he's got for his mum and Billy's role in relation to that. So I do find it pleasing. There are so many people saying, I'm glad with this outcome, but that's not the end of the story, and recognising there's got to be supports put in place. I guess the flip side is, and we spoke about this especially a lot in the first live stream event, and it's still that bit about would a case such as this gender much attention just now? And we are not for a second saying that real life scenarios of Billy are not important. Of course, there are real issues and there are real vulnerabilities and there are real needs. But when we've got knowing what children and family social workers up and down the country in the UK are the cases that they're sitting on and the caseloads that they're sitting on with some of the levels of vulnerability and risk of other cases that will exist, it does beg the question of where Billy and his family would be in that pecking order.
Yep, I think, very important kind of, and it goes back to the kind of themes that have been running through the last, throughout the whole course and in the last few weeks in particular again.
And to some extent, it mirrors and actually I think kind of validates those exercises when we've asked you to pick 3 out of 10 and almost saying, well, that's an impossible task. It is an impossible task because you don't have enough information. But actually think about what especially children and family social workers are doing on a day-to-day, a week-to-week basis. They've got all the well, hopefully, if we work on the assumption that in all their cases they've got all the information that they need. But we've got children and family social workers, we've got departments, we've got services, quite literally having to make impossible choices on a daily basis in terms of who do they give time to, who do they give resource to. And these are and you know, some of this links back to what we're talking about in terms of challenges of kind of budgets and austerity, and I hope it's not coming across as kind of sitting here kind of looking through rose-tinted glasses. And these challenges have always existed. No, there's never been a finite pot of money for education, for health, for social services. So in whatever country we're in, we've all got challenges in terms of how we balance that. But certainly from a UK context, it does feel that we are sitting in a particularly challenging set of situations just now.
I think that sums it up perfectly in terms of the scale of the challenge. Definitely. So, I mean, if people have had over the last 6 weeks their appetite whetted, I mean, what could they do from a Strathclyde point of view if they were interested?
Right, so I guess kind of one thing to kind of draw your attention to is that we have a distance learning. So again, start to the course we're going to talk about is completely distance learning. So it's the same as Care for Vulnerable Children in terms of the fact that you get no physical attendance requirement. It's quite different to Care for Vulnerable Children. It's a master's level qualification, an MSc in Child and Youth Care Studies by distance learning. I'm the course leader on that programme. It's a part-time programme and it's run over 3 years. Now, big contrast to Care for Vulnerable Children. Anybody can sign up to Care for Vulnerable Children and use it as a learning opportunity or a CPD opportunity. The MSc, being a university level master's course, has very kind of specific entry requirements. The 2 main ones would be a relevant professional qualification degree in the first instance, because this is postgraduate study, so it's master's level. But the other requirement is that the students require to be working in a childcare setting. In that sense, it's work-based learning in the sense, and all the work that the students do on the course is about relating it back to their role, their setting, their organisation.
And just to say, it's child and youth care, not just childcare. So it's that international kind of definition, spanning everything from residential care to other settings.
Social pedagogy, it draws on social work, it draws on psychology, it draws on social policy, etc. And again, we have a worldwide audience, not 126 different countries, but we've had students. The bulk of our students come from UK and from Canada, but we've had students from students from Australia, New Zealand, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Rwanda, Nigeria, and this year we've got students from Greenland.
Wow!
So and there's the chance, an opportunity, and one of the things that's different on the MSc, it's all distance learning, but we use a virtual classroom where everybody's in the same place at the same time having real-time conversations, because that's obviously not something that is part of Care for Vulnerable Children.
Nice. So what did people do if they're interested?
So if that's something you're interested in, if you go on the University of Strathclyde website, put my name in or put in Child and Youth Care, it'll take you to the webpage. I'll also post I'll post a comment under this on the Care for Vulnerable Children, and that'll have the link and that'll take you there. You can get more information about the course, here my email address, and if you're interested interested, drop me a line. And I guess one other thing to mention is, if you have completed Care for Vulnerable Children and you've got the certificate which proves that you've completed Care for Vulnerable Children, and you apply to come onto the MSc, and you're successful on the MSc, you get a 10% fee reduction
Really?
as a consequence of having completed Care for Vulnerable Children.
Nice.
Okay, so that might be something that you might be interested in either this year or further down the line. We have yearly intakes, and we always start in September, but we're still recruiting, and we still have places available for this September. I think that's about us. So,
well, I suppose it just ends by us saying a heartfelt, huge thanks for all your engagement, all your contribution, all the questions. It's been a real privilege for us to be part of this and to work with you on this journey. So keep challenging, keep asking, keep engaging. Don't forget Future Learn's other range of courses as well. Yeah. And we look forward to meeting you somewhere in some country at some point in the future.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've had this yet, but I've been at various events now where people have come up to me and said, "You don't know me, but I know you," and it's via this. So if you do bump into us,
say hello,
and let us know. But as John Paul says, it's been excellent working with you over the last 6 weeks. Remember, the course is still available for another 2. All the materials still available for another 2 weeks if you haven't upgraded, so you can continue to go and engage with material. But until next time, thank you.